Unaware she owns the company he works for, rich husband and his mistress invited his pregnant ex-wife as a joke to mock her, but when she arrived as the new CEO, everyone was stunned and they were both fired. Her ex-husband and his mistress had invited her here as a joke, as a cruel, twisted game to parade their happiness in front of the pregnant wife Joel had thrown away like garbage. But as Miriam's trembling fingers clutched her purse, as tears threatened to spill from her eyes for the 1,000th time since he'd abandoned her, she could see them across the room. Joel, in his sharp navy suit, his arm wrapped possessively around Vanessa Chen, the woman he'd chosen over his own child, over the vows he'd whispered on their wedding night when he'd said, "You're everything I'll ever need, Miriam. Everything." They were laughing. Actually laughing. Like they hadn't destroyed her. Like Joel hadn't left her screaming his name 23 times on the bathroom floor when she'd miscarried their second baby at 8 weeks while he was in bed with Vanessa. But what Joel didn't know, what made Miriam's hands shake with something between rage and grief, was that the company he'd bragged about for 4 years, the company where he'd just been crowned vice president, the company where he'd built his affair in supply closets and late-night meetings, she owned it. Not managed it, not worked for it, owned every brick, every contract, every single piece of his so-called success. In 6 minutes, the MC would call her name. In 6 minutes, the woman Joel had called boring, unambitious, just baby stuff would walk onto that stage as the new CEO. In 6 minutes, his entire world would collapse. But as Miriam watched Vanessa whisper something in Joel's ear, watched him kiss her forehead the way he used to kiss Miriam's when she was pregnant and scared, one question burned through her chest. When he finally saw her standing in that spotlight, wearing the power he never knew she had, holding the career he thought he'd built on his own, would he remember the night he'd said, "I don't love you anymore," and walked out while their daughter kicked in her belly? Would he feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused? Or would he just beg for mercy he didn't deserve? And God help her, did she even want him to? Miriam forced herself to take a step forward. The ballroom smelled like expensive perfume and champagne, like success and celebration, like everything she used to dream about before Joel turned their marriage into a nightmare. The floor was marble, polished so clean she could see her reflection, a ghost of the woman she used to be. Her midnight blue gown hugged her body perfectly. The body she'd fought to reclaim after giving birth alone in a hospital room, while Joel was probably kissing Vanessa somewhere, celebrating his freedom. Her hair was different now, shorter, sharper, cut the day after she'd signed the divorce papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She looked like power. She looked like money. She looked like someone who had never cried herself to sleep holding a onesie that would never be worn. But inside, she was still that woman on the bathroom floor, bleeding and screaming into the phone that Joel never answered. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne. Miriam grabbed a glass, even though she knew she wouldn't drink it. Her hands needed something to hold, something to keep them from shaking, from giving away the storm raging inside her chest. Across the room, Joel threw his head back and laughed at something Vanessa said, his hand resting on the small of her back, the same way he used to touch Miriam when they were happy, when she still believed in forever. Vanessa looked perfect. 28 years old, slim, sharp, dressed in a red dress that screamed confidence. Her hair was long and shiny, her smile was bright and cruel, and when she looked at Joel, she looked at him like he was a prize she'd won. Miriam wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. But then she saw it. The banner hanging above the stage. "Congratulations, Vice President Joel Carter." His name in bold letters, like he'd earned it, like he deserved it, like he hadn't built his career on the back of a company his wife's family owned. The same company where Vanessa worked in HR, where she'd approved Joel's promotion while sleeping with him, where she'd falsified expense reports to fund their secret trips to Miami and New York, while Miriam sat at home pregnant, trusting, blind. Miriam's grip tightened on the champagne glass. 5 minutes now. 5 minutes until the MC would step onto that stage and say her name. 5 minutes until Joel's smile would crack. 5 minutes until Vanessa's confidence would crumble. 5 minutes until the entire room would go silent and stare at the woman they thought was nothing. But right now, in this moment, nobody knew who she was. A few people glanced at her, curious, whispering. She looked expensive. She looked important. But they didn't recognize her. Why would they? The last time anyone from North Point saw Miriam Hayes, she was 7 months pregnant, standing beside Joel at the company family picnic, smiling like she believed in him. That woman was dead. Miriam took another step forward, her heels clicking softly against the marble. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, in her fingertips, in the base of her spine. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to leave, to protect herself from the humiliation Joel and Vanessa had planned. But something stronger kept her moving. Something darker. Something that had been growing inside her since the night Joel walked out. Since the morning she buried their second child. Since the moment her father died and left her a company she never wanted, but now wielded like a weapon. And then Joel saw her. His eyes locked on hers across the ballroom, and for one brief, beautiful second, confusion flickered across his face. He didn't recognize her at first. Not like this. Not dressed like she mattered. Not standing tall like she wasn't broken. But then his brain caught up, and his smile faltered, and Miriam saw the exact moment he realized it was her. Vanessa noticed his reaction and turned, following his gaze. When she saw Miriam, her smile grew wider, meaner, hungrier. She leaned close to Joel and whispered something, and Joel's face hardened. He whispered back, and they both laughed again, but this time it was different. This time it was performance. This time it was a message. We won. You lost. Look at us. Look at you. Miriam didn't look away. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just stood there, holding her champagne glass, counting down the seconds until everything Joel thought he knew about his life would explode. 4 minutes. A woman in a black suit approached Miriam, clipboard in hand, Bluetooth earpiece glowing. "Miss Hayes?" she asked quietly, professionally. Miriam nodded. The woman smiled, respectful, careful. "We're ready for you whenever you are. The MC will introduce you right after the VP recognition. Are you comfortable with the remarks we prepared, or would you like to speak freely?" Miriam's throat tightened. She'd prepared remarks, safe, corporate, appropriate. But looking at Joel now, looking at the way Vanessa's hand rested on his chest, looking at the banner with his name on it, Miriam heard herself say, "I'll speak freely." The woman nodded and walked away. 3 minutes. Joel and Vanessa started moving through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. Joel's colleagues clapped him on the back. Vanessa beamed beside him like a first lady. They moved closer to where Miriam stood, and she realized with a jolt of nausea that they were walking toward her. Not because they knew, but because they wanted to. They wanted her to see them up close. Joel stopped 3 feet away from Miriam, Vanessa tucked under his arm, and for the first time in 5 months, he spoke directly to her. "Miriam," he said, his voice smooth, confident, almost kind. "I'm surprised you came." Vanessa's smile was pure poison. "We weren't sure you'd actually show up," she added, her voice sweet like honey laced with glass. "But I'm glad you did. Joel's worked so hard for this. It's important to celebrate success, don't you think?" Miriam looked at Joel, really looked at him. The man she'd loved, the man she'd trusted, the man who'd held her hand during her first ultrasound and cried when he heard their baby's heartbeat. His eyes were the same, his smile was the same, but everything underneath was gone. "Congratulations," Miriam said quietly, her voice steady, cold. "You've earned it." Joel's smile widened. He thought she meant it. He thought she was broken. He thought this was closure. Vanessa tilted her head, faux sympathy dripping from her expression. "How are you doing, Miriam? Really, I know the divorce was hard, but you look good, different." She paused, let the word hang. "Are you seeing anyone?" Miriam's fingers tightened around the champagne glass so hard she thought it might shatter. But before she could answer, before she could say anything that would give away the rage burning through her veins, the lights dimmed. The ballroom went quiet. A spotlight hit the stage. The MC, a tall man in a gray suit, stepped up to the microphone, smiling wide. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice booming through the speakers. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate excellence, leadership, and the future of North Point Enterprises." Joel squeezed Vanessa's hand. She squeezed back. They didn't even look at Miriam anymore. They were already savoring their victory. The MC continued. "Tonight, we recognize one of our rising stars, a man who has shown exceptional dedication, vision, and integrity. Please join me in congratulating our new Vice President of Regional Operations, Joel Carter." The room erupted in applause. Joel stepped forward, waving, humble, gracious. Vanessa clapped like she was at the Oscars. A few people whistled. Someone shouted, "Speech!" Joel laughed, stepped onto the stage, and took the microphone. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of emotion, full of lies. "This means the world to me. I've spent 4 years at this company, learning, growing, building relationships, and I couldn't have done it without the support of incredible people." He glanced at Vanessa. "Especially the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Miriam thought she might vomit. Joel continued. "North Point is more than a job, it's a family, and I'm honored to be part of it. I promise to lead with integrity, with heart, and with a commitment to making this company the best it can be." More applause, more smiles. Joel handed the microphone back to the MC and stepped down, pulling Vanessa into a kiss. The crowd cheered, and then the MC raised his hand, quieting the room. "Now," he said, his tone shifting, becoming more serious, more reverent, "we have one more very special announcement tonight. As many of you know, we recently experienced the loss of our founder and chairman, Richard Hayes. His passing was a tremendous loss, not just for this company, but for everyone who knew him." The room went silent, respectful, somber. Joel's smile faded slightly, but he nodded along, playing the part. The MC continued. "But in his absence, the board has moved quickly to ensure continuity and vision. And tonight, I'm honored to introduce the person who will be leading North Point Enterprises into the future. She is brilliant, she is bold, and she carries her father's legacy with grace and strength." Miriam's heart stopped. "Please join me in welcoming our new Chief Executive Officer, Miriam Hayes." The room exploded, not in applause, in shock. Heads whipped toward Miriam. Whispers erupted like wildfire. People who'd ignored her moments ago now stared, wide-eyed, mouths open. The spotlight swung across the room and landed directly on her. And Joel's face went white. Vanessa's hand fell from his arm. Miriam handed her champagne glass to a stunned waiter, lifted her chin, and walked toward the stage. Every step echoed, every eye followed. And when she reached the stairs, when she climbed onto that stage and took the microphone from the MC's trembling hand, when she turned and looked out at the sea of faces staring back at her, Joel's face pale and frozen, Vanessa's mouth open in disbelief, Miriam finally smiled. Not a kind smile, not a forgiving smile, a smile that said, "You have no idea what's coming." Miriam stood under the spotlight, the microphone cool against her palm, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The silence in the ballroom was thick, suffocating, electric. 200 people stared at her like she'd just stepped out of a grave they thought they'd buried her in. But the only faces that mattered were the two frozen in horror near the back, Joel, his skin pale as paper, and Vanessa, her red dress suddenly looking like a target she couldn't escape from. Miriam's hands didn't shake anymore. The tears that had threatened to fall at the entrance had evaporated, burned away by something hotter, something that had been building since the night Joel told her she wasn't enough, since the morning she'd hemorrhaged alone on cold tile, since the funeral where she'd buried her father and inherited an empire Joel never knew existed. "Good evening," Miriam said, her voice steady, clear, amplified across the room. "Some of you know me, most of you don't. And one of you thought you did." Her eyes found Joel's. He flinched. "My name is Miriam Hayes. Richard Hayes was my father. This company, North Point Enterprises, along with Hayes Medical Solutions and 13 other subsidiaries, belongs to my family, which means as of 3 weeks ago, it belongs to me." The whispers grew louder. Phones came out. People leaned toward each other, exchanging frantic glances. Someone gasped. Miriam didn't stop. "I know tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a recognition of hard work, leadership, integrity." She paused, let the word integrity hang in the air like smoke. "And it will be. But first I need to address something personal, something that affects the ethical foundation of this company." Joel's jaw clenched. Vanessa grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. He tried to pull away, but she held on tighter, panic flooding her eyes. Miriam continued, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. 4 years ago, a man joined this company. He was passionate, hard-working, dedicated. I know because I was married to him." The gasps were louder now. Heads turned toward Joel like a wave. "His name is Joel Carter, and tonight you celebrated his promotion to vice president." Miriam's smile was cold, surgical. "What you don't know is that Joel's promotion was approved by Vanessa Chen, a senior HR manager. What you also don't know is that Joel and Vanessa have been in a romantic relationship for over a year. A relationship that began while Joel was still married to me, while I was 7 months pregnant with his child." The room exploded in whispers. Someone shouted, "Oh my God!" Another voice said, "No way." Cameras flashed. Miriam saw colleagues backing away from Joel and Vanessa like they carried a disease. Joel finally found his voice. "Miriam, stop!" But his microphone wasn't on. His voice cracked and died in the noise. Miriam's eyes burned into his. "Joel left me the week before Christmas, moved in with Vanessa while I gave birth to our daughter alone. He didn't come to the hospital, didn't call, didn't ask if his child was alive." Her voice broke, just slightly, just enough to let the pain through. But what he did do was approve Vanessa's promotion while sleeping with her. He did falsify expense reports to fund trips they took together on company money. He did violate every ethical standard this company stands for. Vanessa's face crumpled. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Joel started pushing through the crowd toward the stage, desperation twisting his features. "Miriam, please, let me explain." But security was already moving toward him, hands up, blocking his path. Miriam's voice cut through the chaos like glass. "Joel Carter and Vanessa Chen, effective immediately. You are both terminated for gross ethical violations, conflict of interest, and fraudulent expense reporting. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings under escort. Your access has been revoked." She looked directly at Joel, and for the first time in months, she let him see her pain. "You told me I was boring. Unambitious, just baby stuff. You said I wasn't the woman you married." Her voice dropped to a whisper that the microphone still caught. "You were right. I'm not her anymore. She died the night you left." "But the woman standing here?" Miriam's hand steadied. "She owns everything you thought you built." Joel's knees buckled. Vanessa sobbed openly, mascara running down her face. Security reached them, hands on their shoulders, guiding them toward the exit. The crowd parted like they were contagious, and as Joel was led past the stage, he looked up at Miriam one last time, his eyes desperate, broken, pleading. "Miriam," he whispered, loud enough for her to hear. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Miriam looked down at him, and for a moment, just a moment, she remembered the man who'd read to her when she was sick, who'd built their baby's crib with his own hands, who'd cried at their wedding. But then she remembered the 23 unanswered calls, the blood on the bathroom floor, the silence when their daughter was born. "So am I," Miriam said quietly, and she turned away as security escorted them both out of the ballroom, out of the company, out of her life. The doors closed behind them. The room stayed silent, and Miriam stood alone under the spotlight, victorious and empty, wondering if revenge was supposed to feel this hollow. The ballroom remained frozen for 3 long seconds after Joel and Vanessa disappeared through the doors. Miriam stood on the stage, microphone still in her hand, her reflection caught in 200 shocked faces staring back at her. She could hear her own breathing through the speakers, could feel the weight of what she'd just done settling on her shoulders like snow. This was supposed to feel good. This was supposed to feel like justice. But all she felt was tired, so incredibly tired. Then someone started clapping. Slow at first, a single pair of hands cutting through the silence. Miriam looked toward the sound and saw an older woman in a silver dress, one of the board members her father had trusted, standing with tears in her eyes. Then another person joined, then another, and suddenly the entire room erupted in applause, not polite corporate clapping, but real, thunderous, standing ovation applause that shook the chandeliers. Miriam blinked, confused, overwhelmed. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected judgment, whispers, people questioning whether she'd been too harsh, too emotional, too personal. But instead, they were cheering. Women were crying. Men were nodding with respect. Someone shouted, "That took guts!" Another voice called, "Welcome, boss!" And Miriam realized in that moment that half the room had probably suspected something about Joel and Vanessa, had probably seen the late nights and closed-door meetings, had probably felt the unfairness but stayed silent because who were they to speak up? She'd just done what they couldn't. She'd told the truth. Miriam swallowed hard and lifted the microphone again. The applause died down, anticipation thick in the air. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now, more human. "I didn't plan to start my tenure as CEO like this. I wanted to talk about vision, growth, the future. But I learned something these past few months, something my father used to tell me when I was young." She paused, remembering his voice, his steady hands, the way he'd held her when her mother died. He said, "Miriam, power isn't about control. It's about responsibility. And the first responsibility is truth." The room was silent again, but this time it felt different. Respectful, listening. "So here's my truth," Miriam continued. "I didn't want this job. I didn't want to be CEO. I wanted to be a wife, a mother. I wanted to build cribs and pick out baby names and believe that love was enough." Her voice cracked. "But life had other plans. And when everything I thought I knew fell apart, I had a choice. I could disappear, or I could stand up." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Yes." Another person nodded. Miriam's eyes swept across the faces. "This company will not tolerate dishonesty. It will not reward cruelty. And it will not protect people who abuse their power." She took a breath. "But it will reward integrity. It will celebrate those who do the right thing even when it's hard. and it will be a place where every single person, no matter their title, is valued." The applause came again, louder this time. Miriam handed the microphone back to the MC, whose eyes were wet with emotion, and stepped down from the stage. People swarmed her immediately. Handshakes, congratulations, words of support. A young woman from accounting grabbed Miriam's hand and whispered, "Thank you. You have no idea what that meant." Miriam just nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. An hour later, the ballroom had mostly emptied. Miriam stood alone near the windows, looking out at the city lights stretching endlessly into the night. Her phone buzzed. A message from her nanny. "Baby's asleep. She smiled today. Really smiled." Miriam's chest tightened. She typed back quickly. "On my way home." She turned to leave and nearly ran into the older board member who'd clapped first. The woman smiled gently. "Your father would be proud," she said. Miriam's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back all night. "I hope so," she whispered. The woman squeezed her hand. "He is. And so are we." Miriam walked out of the ballroom, through the lobby into the cool night air. Her driver pulled up, but she waved him off. "I'll walk," she said. She needed to feel the ground under her feet, needed to breathe, needed to remember that she was still here, still alive, still standing. As she walked down the quiet street, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a blocked number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Hello?" Silence. Then Joel's voice, broken, small. "Miriam, She hung up, blocked the number, and kept walking. When she got home, she opened the door to her apartment quietly, kicked off her heels, and walked into the nursery. Her 5-month-old daughter, Emma, was sleeping peacefully in her crib, tiny fists curled near her face. Miriam reached down and gently touched Emma's soft hair, and the tears finally came. Not tears of anger or revenge, tears of relief, of survival, of knowing that she'd protected her daughter from a man who didn't deserve either of them. "We're going to be okay," Miriam whispered, her voice trembling. "I promise you, baby, we're going to be more than okay." And for the first time in months, she believed it. So tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, if you felt Miriam's pain and her power, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Because everyone deserves to know that betrayal doesn't define you. Your comeback does.